Can at least the organizers and presenters see the screen that has been shared by Esme?
Yes, I confirm.
I also confirm I'm able to see.
I think Dr. Shileshe, you can open the webinar now.
Thanks, Rahid. Just to welcome everyone to this webinar. I don't know, maybe I think looking maybe at the time, we may not have maybe the chance to do a round of introductions, but maybe if you are able to maybe just write in the chat your details, and or Joshua, maybe just to find out, maybe do we have everyone in the webinar is registered?
Yes, we already have the details of everyone attending.
Okay, thank you. So we have quite, I think, limited time for today, so we will try to cut down on maybe some of these formalities. So just to welcome everyone, I think for us, this is the first webinar that we are having and we intend to have a series of webinars on digitalization and carbon markets. And I think for most of you who are in this call, you are already part of the team that will be going to Berlin to participate in the Innovate for Climate conference. And so this webinar is actually intended to be an introduction, to what will be discussed in the conference. But also apart from that, the ASCENT project itself, again, as some of you who attended the ASCENT launch may know, the ASCENT launch is actually, quite heavy on utilization of digital tools for planning and for, monitoring of projects. So going forward, we actually intend to adopt digital tools at regional level to connect with those who are members of ASCENT or the participating countries in ASCENT. And we also hope that the participating countries will also adopt these digital tools so that we can communicate seamlessly. As most of you know by now, ASCENT is quite ambitious and quite a big project. So we hope that this webinar will give you a good introduction of what is to come. And of course, there will be, opportunities maybe in the future, for either capacity building and, to help you adopt the tools. Now, for today's webinar, we have 3 presenters, maybe 4 presenters mainly. So we have COMESA, Ms. Said Mairesela. Then we have Esme from the World Bank, and then we also have from Uganda, our colleagues from Uganda. So they will give us practical experience. They have adopted they have adopted some of these digital tools for monitoring projects. And so we are going to have Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company give us, share with us some experiences of what is happening on the ground in Uganda. So I'll stop here and maybe just ask Mr. Mairesela just to come in. I believe you are the first presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shileshe. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the webinar, Digitalization for Energy Access. The digital platforms that we are going to talk about today, some of them have been developed specifically for energy access. Some are being taken advantage of after they are serving other areas, but they are enablers to energy access. So part one of this presentation will be entitled Digitalization, a key enabler for energy access and for ASCENT. Part two will be digital tools for project implementation. Part three, a case study for digital monitoring, reporting and verification for the electricity access scale up project in Uganda. Part four, proposed ASCENT, a digital architecture and adoption strategy. Let me introduce myself. I am Ahid Maeresera. I'm working on the ASCENT project, having been carried over from the REEF project, which is the Regional Infrastructure Finance Facility. I'm on the technical side looking at policy and regulatory aspect of the two projects. You can go to the next slide, Esme. The first slide in the introduction is data for evidence-based policy making. Prior to the advent of the digital platforms, electrification planning was not all that evidence-based. So there were discrepancies between what was on the ground and what was used to formulate policy. So data is essential to prepare evidence-based policies that will lead to evidence-based plans, to use also to track progress of energy access across technologies, compare progress against plans, national targets and updates of these plans, and they help regulatory oversight and generate market intelligence, and also can be used to identify gaps and devise strategies to address them. For example, the screen that we are seeing for Zambia, it's showing percentage of population with access to electricity in 2021, and the percentage of population with access to clean cooking, and the percentage of population or percentage of total renewable energy in the energy mix, and in energy efficiency. This is a typical example of an informative, evidence-based data that is going to be used for policymakers, by policymakers in Zambia. Next slide. There's been a trend that has become as an opportunity for accelerating energy access being driven by digitization. And digitization in the energy sector has been powered by the following: increased connectivity, increased financial inclusion through increased mobile phone ownership and mobile money development. Like I said, the mobile phone networks are being taken advantage of because they are bringing people who were previously not banked, without credit history, into being observed and participating in the financial inclusion, and they can now be the people who can actually be active on energy access through the payment that they've been doing through their mobile technologies. And also, they've been driven by technological innovation and cost reductions. Technological innovation has come in many ways in terms of energy efficiency, where gadgets are now using very little electricity. Innovation in manufacturing, where the manufacturing processes have been made more efficient and leading to cost reduction in solar equipment, in wind and mini hydro equipment. Widespread use of global positioning systems, making it possible for planners and analysts to measure resources at specific sites and gather many other pieces of information like population and electricity demand or energy demand for those sites in order to be able to plan. This has been enabled mainly by having smart sensors like smart meters, communication channels like the mobile networks, digital infrastructure like the customer relation management, cloud computing that is making it possible to store large amounts of data and information, and dashboards that are being used to present meaningful information from data collected from different sources. Next slide, Esme. And leveraging the scale of digitization across energy access technologies, we can make an observation that grid investment into digital technologies has been up by 50% since 2015, and approximately 20% of all investments in grid connectivity. And increased connectivity in off-grid areas where 2/3 of the off-grid population is also connected, and averaging 86% of men and 77% of women, and greater than 50% of unbanked population. That is, more than 15% of unbanked population are involved in one way or the other, connected by mobile networks or mobile phones, and participating on in mobile payments in the form of pay-as-you-go, where participants can pay as they use the services. And it's approximately 50% of quality verified products sold through pay-as-you-go. And 84% can afford an entry-level solar home system through pay-as-you-go with 8 months of payment plan. This is an enabled sector of the population that was not involved in banking and financial inclusion previously. So it's a potential base for increasing energy access through the enabling effect of digitization. Next slide. Digitalization has enabled grid and mini-grid for improved operation. Grid and mini-grid optimization of various operational aspects has taken place through digitization. For example, increased penetration of renewable energy into the electricity mix. Renewable energy is variable, and it was very difficult to increase its proportion within the electricity mix of a country. But digitalization has enabled this to happen through the use of digital technologies to enable a bigger portion of renewable energy to be integrated into the electricity mix, and also increase the reliability of weak grids. Grids that used to be very weak are being made reliable through remote monitoring using smart sensors linked to alert mechanisms, and improve the response times for repairs, predictive maintenance, and in turn, the reliability of the service itself. And cash to power. Mobile money payments linked with prepayments are used to convert mobile money cash into power through pay-as-you-go. And this has been enabled through smart and Internet of Things at generator level, at inverter level, at smart meter level, where data is being gathered in real time by smart meters and fed to digital platforms for aggregation, visualization, and monitoring and reporting and verification using the data that is coming through the digitization process. Next slide. For example, pay-as-you-go models are bridging the affordability gap. pay-as-you-go generates a wealth of data. Those who provide payment structures for those who are buying on credit want to know the payment history of the people who want to buy on credit. And people before who were previously not bankable, it was not easy or almost impossible to get payment history for those people. But as they do pay as you go, even for their airtime on their cell phones, they are leaving a footprint of their paying habits that can be used for them to borrow and also get energy access through solar home systems. So payment data to assess their credit worthiness, lights on off. Lights on off is the ability of a company that supplied you with the solar home system to cut you off when you don't pay and to reconnect you when you clear your debt without having to physically visit you. Using customer data like customer ID and eligibility. Internet of Things is the ability of many gadgets to communicate with each other and on the same network and with the other gadgets outside their networks. To review detailed consumption data and to track system health, that is the health of the equipment that is connected in the field. And customer-oriented business models are business models like those that use pay-as-you-go. And opportunities to capitalize on interoperability. As the digital platforms are coming and increasingly being used, they force standards institutions to start prescribing standards on the equipment and processes themselves. So the equipment and processes are becoming standardized, and by being standardized, even their communication protocols are being standardized. So there is interoperability that is increasing because they are using the same standards of communication and protocols. So they can share pay-as-you-go data within financiers to improve due diligence on processes. And on the right side, it's just a pictorial diagram that is showing flow of information from the time someone can pay for pay-as-you-go services on solar home systems to the point where they can even call a call center and the pay-as-you-go or the solar home system supplying company can supply to that person who has paid a key code, and they can actually use that key code to reconnect themselves. So the digitalization process has made everything automated from reconnection to disconnection. The next slide. You have come back to the same slide, Esme. The next slide. There is an opportunity to create an end-to-end digital ecosystem. So ASCENT is a valuable opportunity to take that into consideration and take advantage of it to improve data availability and quality through linkages between different dimensions. These include integrated information flows, which was usually fragmented across different activities and stakeholders under one framework, and systematized the standards and standardization of the approaches to data collection and aggregation, leveraging the interoperability and readiness of digital tools, and also linkages between energy planning and program design. We can now use digital planning tools like integrated electrification planning using GIS, geographic information systems, that is a collection of hardware and software that can be used to gather data, analyze it, process it, and disseminate it, to align regional and national planning processes, to promote cross-border electrification, and to improve geographical targeting. The pillars that are being mentioned in Pillar 1, Pillar 2, Pillar 3 are on the right in the terms of a circular diagram there. And this can facilitate program implementation through shared detailed demand data underpinning site assessment into tendering. Demand drives everything. As you verify and ascertain demand, you know what system to put, energy system to put in each location. Keep an end-to-end record for auditing and increase the accountability, and automatize the verification and generate evidence of claim management to reduce the burden associated with paper-based processes. Verification enables facilities like result-based financing to be speeded up. You will see on the presentation by UECC from Uganda that it might take from the point the RBF energy company finishes a connection to payment only about 40 days. So they need only working capital of their own of almost a month. By the following month, they will be paid for connection that they will have made, because the verification process and the monitoring process and the reporting process has been made easy by real-time collection of data using DMRVs, digital platforms. And this can strengthen the digital ecosystem through more and more and better data by improved planning and evidence-based strategies for shaping enabling environment through feedback loops, for monitoring, reporting, and verification, and monetization of impact, and fast-tracked access to private finance, which is pillar 3 in the diagram. This is both result-based financing and carbon financing. All these two processes, both these two processes need monitoring, reporting, and verification. Monitoring and reporting and verification for connection made in RBF, and monitoring verification process and payment for carbon reduction that have been claimed and verified to have taken place. So the circular diagram is ranging from national planning using geospatial electrification planning to e-tendering, where sites, say, for mini grids are packaged into portfolios. Thousands of them can be tendered at once. And when they are done and connected, digital contract management can take place, and thereafter digital monitoring, reporting, and verification used for RBF and carbon financing. Next slide, yes, ma'am. The value proposition for energy access stakeholders include governments who can now use information that is evidence on the ground to do better planning, to promote cross-border electrification, to automate workflows, clear contractual risk through early detection of underperformance. Electricity distribution companies, which are called DESCOs, can also improve access to, can use digitalization to improve access to detailed demand-side data and other information underpinning their site assessment and selection, for simultaneous real-time access to tender documents, transparency and fairness, to automatize the standardized and aggregated reporting and reducing transaction costs as they do those processes, and increase the fast-tracked access to private and climate finance through RBF and climate finance. Green investors, they want to see their investment producing impact. They are driven by impact, and DMRVs can be used to measure impact, to increase the transparent truth rank relation and verification of information through standardized metrics, reducing the burden of due diligence, through traceability and integrity of assets, and easy access to project developers, which are the DESCOs themselves, distributed energy companies. The carbon markets can also use this to transparency, traceability, and asset integrity, and the aggregation and harmonization of data and information, increasing ability of audit transaction and changes to data. And to the community itself, it can increase the market, decrease market fragmentation, and promote standardization and alignment of practices, and increase transparency and secure information channels streamlined for information sharing. Those are some of the benefits to different stakeholders within the energy access space. Next slide, yes, ma'am. This is just a summary of that circular diagram that you saw from national planning to e-tendering, where the sites of mini grids, for example, can be packaged and tendered as a package, to digital contracts management and digital monitoring and reporting and verification that will enable RBF, smooth payment, and carbon financing access. And also, it's showing you that there are upcoming webinars on integrated electrification planning on the 26th of August and on carbon financing on the 29th of August. All these two representing digital platforms like the national and regional electrification planning, or taking advantage of the digital platforms like carbon financing and registration. Next slide.
Thanks, Ahid. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Esme Sindhu, and I'm working with the World Bank ASCENT team as energy access consultant. And here, I'm going to take you through, sorry, I need to turn on my camera. Now you can see me. So I will take you through this short presentation on process management and DMRV tools, which are two segments of the program design and implementation building block that Ahid mentioned. So coming back to the diagram here, we have three building blocks where digitalization led by public stakeholders can truly accelerate energy access. And all the webinars will focus on one of the segments or the building blocks. And we are going to try to move forward together and support you in thinking about which tools are relevant for you. So I will keep this presentation as short as possible because it's a refresher from the materials we saw together at the launch for those who attended ASCENT's launch in June. And also because we can follow up, of course, during the Q&A session, but also bilaterally and during the Innovate for Climate conference, which I presume most of you will attend. And not least because we have a very, very interesting presentation from our Ugandan colleagues on a real-life example of adoption of digital monitoring and reporting verification platform, DMRV platform. So let's here focus on the blue arrows, which are covering e-tendering and digital contract management, which I summarize as process management. Process management solutions are useful to overcome some of the challenges inherent to tender and contract management. And if we see the diagram here on the screen, we can realize there is complexity. Multiple stakeholders are involved in each step, performing different actions, have to uphold strict timelines and work through complex workflows. They also have to handle sensitive data, whether it's at the tender stage with commercial data or at the contracting stage where there is still commercial data which is sensitive, but also personal information of end beneficiaries that is used for verification purposes. So they need to rely on reliable communication channels and through these stages, extensive documentation is generated, and they need safe records, safe record keeping. Process management solutions provide comprehensive toolboxes for a seamless implementation. I'm not going to go through the detail of all the tools that can be provided. There are different digital solutions on the market. They are slightly different, but they cover most of what you would need to do tender management and contract management. Overall, process management solutions enable you to digitalize and automate workflows. So making sure that all your operational procedures are defined and roles and responsibilities are clearly allocated, timelines are defined, and actions to take are clear. These tools enable progress tracking against agreed milestones. It is possible to send automated reminders, notifications, and alerts such that the people who are supposed to take an action are reminded if they are not doing so. The tools also provide the ability to store all the documentation in a structured manner, the documentation related to the tender or the contract execution. And through this record keeping, it is possible to have virtual control and to generate an auditing trail. Overall, these solutions reduce risk. The risk of human errors, which is linked, inherent, let's say, to manual submissions. How many applicants have been disqualified because they forgot to answer a mandatory field? So it is possible, if you use a digital tool, to program basic checks that will not allow a submission to go through if one of the mandatory fields is missing. In the same way, it is possible to program checks such that it is not possible to disburse if all the evidence for a milestone has not been submitted by a company. It also enables, through the dashboards and through the inbuilt analytics, to have access to the same information between the contracted party and the contracting agency, and more easily detect underperformance. Overall, these tools increase compliance and integrity, transparency and fairness. It promotes symmetry of information, whether it's at tender stage, so access to all the documents by all the bidders, or whether it's at contracting stage, where both the program implementation unit and the contracted entity can see the same information in terms of progress tracking. Through increased efficiency, these tools decrease transaction cost and time. Process management solutions enable contract or tender stakeholders to interact in a single place, and different tools will cover different segments of the chain, the relevant chain. So it's maybe tender and contract, maybe only tender management, and then you would need another tool for contract management. Most tools will do process management solutions from tender to contracting stage. But there is one tool which is very interesting for energy access programs, which is called Odyssey, which provides an end-to-end digital ecosystem from tender stage to contracting stage, and also linked with a digital monitoring, reporting, and verification platform. In addition, for mini grids, there is a technical module that enables to plan the mini grids themselves. So when you think about adopting such a tool, it is critical to identify your needs first. One doesn't need a Ferrari or to procure a Ferrari if what you need is a Toyota. It will not do the same thing. It will not do what you need. But it is the first step would be to define your needs, and then this enables you to procure a solution which would be which will deliver the most value for money to your agency. Once the tool is procured, it's only the first step of a long journey. Adoption and change management are essential. So at first, you will need, if you haven't already adopted a digital tool, you will need to gather your requirements, to think about your workflows and what it means for adopting the tool. Then all of these requirements will help you design the tool and customize it to your needs. And then you will roll it out, train users, etc. So when adopting such a tool, it's important not to only think about external cost of the tool itself, but also internal cost, because you will need to invest a lot of time and budget as well internally. Let's now move on quickly through the other segment, which is critical to program design and implementation, and which can be digitalized and truly accelerate energy access. So digital monitoring, reporting, and verification platforms enable to facilitate contract management, because they will inform claim management. They will also facilitate verification and empower the program implementation unit through increased oversight. And all of this will accelerate disbursements whilst increasing compliance and integrity. DMRV is critical to turn data-driven strategies into reality. Data can inform program design and targeting strategies. A lot of the results-based financing or other incentives programs usually have some targeting strategy informing the design. It can be a socio-economic targeting, where the subsidy is targeted at vulnerable households. It can be a geographic targeting, where the subsidy is targeted at off-grid or underserved areas. It can be based on other demographic characteristics, such as the gender of the household head, or the subsidy can be targeted at sustainable energy services, where the subsidy is paid for systems that are in use over a long period of time, let it be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. However, there's a critical challenge. When you think about your targeting strategy, you also need to think about how you are going to monitor it. And the design of the monitoring, reporting, and verification aspect is critical to factor it in already at the design stage of the program. It is critical to ensure compliance during implementation. DMRV is a key enabler for country program implementation, but also tracking progress on SDG 7. We know that tracking progress of a program is complex, and monitoring the progress of a program is complex. For most programs, we need data on the customer. Is this customer real? Does she or he exist? Is this unit operational? Is the customer paying for the service? And to reduce fraud, having different data points that are linked to the system data, that are linked to the system, to the customer, and to their payment, enables to triangulate data and to validate some of the data. There is a key challenge when we try to track progress and collect the data. Energy access data for program implementation is expensive and difficult to generate. The program must rely on existing infrastructure for primary data collection for practical reasons. We will not be able to generate our own data on 100% of the systems we subsidize. It is possible for a subsample through an independent verification agent, but it's costly. So we need to rely on IoT devices, Internet of Things devices that the companies use to monitor the system they deploy. And we also can tap into the consumer relationship management databases that they use. Energy access data is difficult to aggregate because of the multiplicity of devices and types of indicators, and it's difficult to verify, difficult and costly to verify. The and there is a very high likelihood of human errors in non-automatized processes. So DMRV platforms and tools have a lot to bring. They rely on 3 pillars: data ingestion and storage, data processing and analytics, and data sharing. There are lots of functions that can be adopted in each of these pillars, but it's very important to note that you can adopt them one after the other. You don't have to adopt the whole package. It can come gradually, and you can refine the tools over time. So in terms of data ingestion and storage, perhaps the main functionality is that DMRV tools enable to aggregate all relevant data in a harmonized format in a single database. And this structured collection is based on real-time energy access data. And basically, you will be able to automatize this data ingestion through APIs. So tapping into the data generated by IoT devices or CRM platforms. But you don't have to make it mandatory. You can also let firms digitalize along the way and allow for a manual intake, for example, in the beginning, to not exclude smaller firms from your incentive scheme. In terms of data processing and analytics, DMRV platforms create a database structure that enables consistency through automatized data validation checks at different points in time. So when the data is imported, for example, then the data is triangulated, and you will have consistency checks along the way. So you can flag outliers, you can go back to the firms if the data doesn't make sense. You can also merge all the data sets and include also the verification step in the tool. That enables real-time monitoring and to program in the tool, in the platform, eligibility checks that are useful for RBF claim facilitation. So you will know very quickly after you receive the data which systems are eligible to receive the incentive. And then very briefly on data sharing. Data sharing is a key functionality to enable DMRV to not only be used within the program implementation, but also share relevant data with other stakeholders beyond program implementation unit and the contracted parties. For example, you can leverage the data that you have collected to inform planning. So you can share some data at the aggregated level with the planning unit in the ministry, such that they can update their plans based on better data and more granular data as well. Let's very briefly go through 2 tools that can hit the ground running in terms of DMRV. They are purpose-built for the energy access sector, and they enable to tailor visualization and analytics to program-specific needs. These tools are Odyssey and Prospect, and you can see that you can tailor your dashboard to have country-level views, portfolio or program-level views, and asset-level views. But this, I think, will need a follow-up session on DMRV tools to drill down into the functionalities. So I will now hand over to Raymond and Desmond from UECCC, the Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope I'm audible. So a very good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all the participants, depending on where you're logging in from. Good reference or mention has been made about us participating in this webinar, and we're excited to share our experience so far as an implementing partner of a World Bank funded project in Uganda. So we shall be presenting myself with my colleague, Mr. Raymond Kugonza, who is the manager for ICT at UCCC, that is Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company, and myself, Desmond Tutupio, as a senior monitoring evaluation specialist. You will recognize when we talk of digital monitoring, reporting, and verification, two key entities come to play, or expertise come at play jointly. That is the IT and M&E. So that's the reason why we are jointly presenting our experience with Raymond. The next slide, please. So our profile basically is to give you a quick introduction of our organization. Our organization is Uganda Energy Credit Capitalization Company, which is a government of Uganda institution, and it is in place to facilitate participation of the private sector, basically to catalyze financing for renewable energy project development and increase access to clean and modern energy services. UCCC, as I'll be referring to as abbreviated, is owned jointly by the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development of Uganda. I'm glad to see participation of our colleagues from the ministry, that is Dr. Banaga and Kanyesije. Good to recognize them. Also, we are owned by the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development and the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda. More specifically, we are set up to facilitate the private sector participation in financing of renewable energy development. You recognize that the upfront cost of renewable energy technologies pose affordability challenge when it comes to uptake of our renewable energy technologies across Africa, of course, with Uganda not being an exception. And because of that, UCCC was created by government, basically to facilitate private sector participation, especially financial institutions and energy service companies, through using limited public resources, where we mobilize from government of Uganda and other development partners to ensure that we leverage the private sector participation, where we know, for example, financial institutions have got the capital, but because of so many reasons, don't deploy them for uptake of renewable energy technologies. So we are there to catalyze the market so that they're able to participate in this space. I'll go straight to the next slide, because what I've mentioned is already stipulated in the objectives. So as UCCC, we're implementing a World Bank funded project called the Electricity Access Scale-Up Project. Of course, government of Uganda, through funding from the World Bank, is implementing this project. This project aims at increasing access to electricity, that is on-grid and off-grid, and also clean cooking technologies for our Ugandan households, refugees and refugee host communities, industrial parks, commercial enterprises, and public institutions. There are basically two major components of this project. We have grid expansion and connectivity that is being implemented by the mainstream Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. And the second component is the financial intermediation for energy access that is being implemented by UCCC. This component of financial intermediation is basically to enable us to provide financial and technical support to support the access to off-grid solar for lighting, clean cooking solutions, and productive use of energy. The project is targeting beneficiaries that include households, commercial enterprises, and public institutions. At the end of the day, we're looking at facilitating dissemination of close to 353,000 clean cooking solutions, targeted to benefit almost 1.6 million Ugandans, and about 159,000 solar for lighting and solar for productive use, accessing or supporting access by almost 700,000 Ugandans. And this is intervention that will cover nationwide, including refugee communities and the hosting districts. However, under our financial intermediation component, there are a number of programs that we are looking at. That includes a result-based financing facility. This result-based financing facility is basically grants that will be provided to our end users through energy service companies to address affordability constraints. So it is by way of subsidies or discounts that range between 40 to 60%, depending on the technology. These technologies include clean cooking technologies, off-grid solar for lighting, and the productive use of energy. And basically also supporting the energy service company to ensure that they penetrate the market, the incentives that are provided to these energy service companies under this RBF scheme, the result-based financing scheme. Also have a credit support facility. This credit support facility is basically to support financial institutions. We offer in terms of lines of credit, where we ensure that the financial institutions are able to on-lend to end users, fellow Ugandans and commercial enterprises, so that they can access or acquire the technologies I've mentioned before. We also have electrification of public institutions, where it's a grant component that will be supporting electrification of public institutions in partnership with the Ministries of Education to electrify schools, Ministry of Health to electrify health centers, and Ministry of Water and Environment to provide public water points. That is one program. And we also have a clean cooking program, which is also a grant to ensure that there's provision of clean cooking, institutional clean cooking solutions to public institutions, including schools, health centers. And lastly, a technical assistance component that will facilitate supporting financial institutions as our partners and other stakeholders to address a number of barriers, including skills, build capacities, to mention but a few. Next slide, please. So, next slide. So in all this, having mentioned the other programs, we have the result-based financing program. No, the previous one. We have the result-based financing program. And like mentioned before, this is a subsidy. And we are partnering with energy service companies that we expect to actually make sales. And these sales will be submitted to UCCC as a claim. And these claims have to be repaid. But before they can be paid, we have to verify that indeed the claims that are being submitted, the sales have been made, the installations of these renewable energy products have been made. So we have an independent verification agent in between that will be doing this verification on behalf of UCCC. Now, if you look at that slide, on the left is the number of days we envisage will take from the time the energy service company makes a sale, they submit the batch as a claim to UCCC. UCCC has to, commission the IVA to undertake verification. This verification has 3 phases. It includes a desk verification from the database. It entails phone verification, calling the beneficiaries to ascertain whether they have received these products. And of course, field verification, physically done by the IVA to confirm that these sales have been made and installations have been made. And in all this, we have a turnaround time of about 40 days to ensure that when an ESCO makes submission, you pay the claims, because the ESCO is using their working capital, and in order to interest them, to motivate them to continue participating, we have to ensure we stick to this turnaround time, and indeed the payment of the claims are made. So this is a very ambitious timeline that we have set for ourselves under the RBF scheme. So how do you do this manually is the challenge. And the next slide, if you can go there, are questions that we ask ourselves to ensure that the turnaround time is actually met and efficiency is realized and there is effective implementation of the RBF scheme. So how do we ensure that we're able to obtain data on the sales that are being made near real time, actually real time? The only way we can answer this is by using a digital platform instead of going manual in other form. But also, how do you ensure that I'm able to track our performance of the stakeholders, especially the energy service company, so that we're able to meet our project execution targets in terms of having analytics, visualizations, and simplified reporting at the end of the day, where we have dashboards that can basically showcase what the energy service companies are doing real time, can enable us, improve where need be, and also plan subsequently. But also three, as a question that we had, how do you ensure that we can implement a robust automation platform that poses, limited IT management workload, and also at the same time, costs are being maintained or minimized at the end of the day. This is how Prospect later came into play. I know our colleague has presented about Odyssey and Prospect. And lastly, what I've mentioned before, how do we achieve our quick turnaround time by ensuring that claims processing is actually is monitored, verifications are done, and we pay the energy service companies to ensure that the program is attractive to them, they're interested to participate in all this. That is how we had to ensure that we adopt a digital platform for the monitoring, verification, and reporting of this RBS scheme. If you go to the next slide, we have answers to these questions that we have posed for ourselves. And allow me at this point to hand over to my colleague Raymond, and then I can come in later to wrap how we have, what steps we have adopted to partner with our Access to Energy Institute from Germany, who are managing the Prospect digital platform. Raymond, I hand over to you to continue from here. Thank you for now.
Thank you very much, Desmond, and greetings to everyone here. We don't have a lot of time, so I'll try to move a bit quickly. So a lot has already been said by the first three presenters, so I think mine is easy to just put the final touch on the story from UECCC. So of the two, Odyssey and Prospect, what we implemented was the Prospect platform, and the journey to that is as listed there. Ideally, we had to sign an MOU, which was a loose engagement document. We then realized that this digital platform was going to run core activities for us, so we changed that into an implementing agreement. And so because we had to put all the terms, you have to have availability, we need to trust people for privacy and for security. And thereafter, and this has been mentioned by, I think it was ESME, it's quite important that you develop clear requirements what you want to automate. We had a serious lesson here. It was quite interesting, but we delayed to create or to define our requirements, and that ended up delaying our adoption or implementation of the Prospect platform. So I was happy when I saw her mention this, and it is not something that we had agreed to discuss prior. So the next is that we then constituted a multidisciplinary technical working committee. When we're discussing about the attendees of this webinar, we realized that most of them were from what we call the user end, right? The people are going to lead the user departments and so on. We did not see technical people. Let me say, we didn't see IT people. I'm not sure whether they're on the platform, but we realized that in our journey, it's important to have a multidisciplinary team that helps you, cover all areas. The teams from Odyssey and Prospect are also multidisciplinary, so you need matching members from your side so that you can maximize the implementation process. So thereafter, of course, we then implemented the system, and then we went for training. We trained the people who are going to train the energy service companies. Then we ran training workshops for ESCOs themselves. And thereafter, then move into the support. So that was the journey, ideally, to adoption of Prospect. Next slide, please. So this should be an interesting one because it tries to cover quite a number of items. Challenges, we would like to call them considerations. And the first top right is make sure you have clear requirements, because that forms your Bible or your journey. You'll always come back and refer to it. Now, again, the challenge we had is that when we initially heard about Prospect, we assumed that the tools are doing everything for us. So midway into the journey, you quickly then find that, oh, so this part of our process is not automated. That part is not covered, the requirements, and so on. So it became then circular, right? So you keep going back simply because we didn't have a clear definition at the start. So quite an important thing here is that you really need to have a clear requirement statement. The next, of course, is that how would we customize this system? Remember, it's a platform being used by very many entities. We're using it in very many countries. So how do you institute a change that does not affect users from other countries? So chatting with the team, the Prospect team, we were able to implement a framework approach. For example, you'll find that the districts that we have in Uganda are different to the districts that you have in maybe Zambia, or for notifications, you might want to say, okay, so when an ESCO submits this notification, please notify ABCD. The notification structure that we have in Uganda is most likely different than you will have in any of the other countries. So instead of this being hard-coded at the back, we came up with a framework so that anyone can design their own notification structure. The next, of course, was the customized workflow of our RBF. Initially, most of these platforms simply pick data, they ingest it, process it, and then they disseminate in the form of, analytics, dashboards, reports, and so on. So that is fairly standard. We did find, however, that we wanted to do it end to end. So after the data enters the system, we wanted to run our RBF processing workflows on the platform, and this is something that wasn't there. So we then embarked on a process to incorporate that RBF mechanism into the platform. So now once data enters the platform, our verification happens on the platform, our alerting happens on the platform, any customized triggers or checks happen on the platform, and then the reporting comes. So that was something that we had to do. Now, of course, we are not sure, we haven't read your operations manual yet to see whether or how common these verification workflows are. The closer they are to each other, then the less you need to change. So, of course, there was the issue of user friendliness. Now, again, this is an interesting one because similar to a plane, if I may use that, usually a passenger boards at the point of entry, then the rest is left to the pilot. And the next thing you know, you're disembarking. So the point of entry is data entering a platform, and then the exit is the dashboards, reporting, and so on. But remember, we introduced the RBF workflow, which is basically the entire journey. So we had to be aware of what was happening in the platform. Now, the people who developed the platform, of course, had made it easier for the technical people, but now we had normal users who had to follow through the process of processing the data. So that wasn't as friendly to them, so we had to make some changes there. Again, this boils down to point one, clear requirements. So then came the issue of privacy of data. Now, interestingly, because of course, most of you might have heard about the data protection and privacy regulations. Bottom line is that you need to protect private data of individuals, personally identifiable information, anything that can identify an individual. So the platform we're using, which is Prospect, was built securely by design, meaning by the time the data entered the platform, thereafter you could not identify, you could know that there is a sale that has happened, there is a system that has been installed, but you couldn't tell to who, or you couldn't call back the person because all the private information, which is the names, the numbers, national IDs, were all anonymized, and you couldn't tell, but that's how the platform had been built securely. So this posed a challenge to us because you do expect that at some point in time, someone or a beneficiary will call and say, look, I had a system installed, it was not installed well, we have a complaint to make, and then you need to refer back to your DMRV. So at that point, you wouldn't be able to search for a name or a number and so on. So we had to come up with a framework that allowed us within the confines of the application to view some of the private data, so that we could identify and support the beneficiaries. That was an interesting thing, that they had built it too securely for our liking. The next is that's bottom left, privacy requirements for the prospect itself. Now, the laws in Uganda state that for anyone collecting information, you have to be registered with the relevant authorities. For our case, it is the Data Protection Office. Now, we did find a challenge because by the time we realized this prospect was already in high gear, but the requirement is that the prospect team, whether it is prospect or Odyssey, if they are collecting information, it would be good to have them registered with your Data Protection Office so that the process is being done legally within the confines of the law. So for all the entities that are going to, or the countries that are going to use these tools, quickly find out if any personally identifiable information is being collected, already start the arrangements and the consultations with your data privacy officers or regulators to see that this registration is done. Again, we have already spoken about the composed team. We had a project implementation team that met weekly. And the importance of this has already been mentioned, so I won't dwell on it. But that is quite key because initially at the start, similar to maybe what you might have here, the engagement was with our executives. And by the time the executives came to us, they said, look, there is this tool that is coming. Everything is catered for. No need to worry. No need to plan for finances. Everything is free and done. Until we started using the tool and then we realized, oh, so we are missing A, B, C, D. So it's good to have a multidisciplinary team, which is why C has M&E and ICT as well. I didn't think we had enough time to bring the user departments, but this is just the first of many presentations. So hopefully we can have them on board to interface. So one of the challenges that we have is the issue of combining similar data from different systems. Case in point, imagine you have a district called Lusaka. So one person brings Lusaka with a double A, another person brings Lusaka with a single A. That's just a very basic example. So we're bringing all this data from different systems and we want it in one central location, but people are spelling Lusaka differently. So we had a challenge there whereby people are using different data sets, and as UCCC, we opted to use the national one done by the Bureau of Statistics and encourage everyone who intended to merge data into the national and then thereafter, of course, the regional, to use a standard data set. Of course, politically on our side, sometimes to extend resources, you break up a district and it becomes two, you create new sub-counties and so on. That happens a lot in Uganda. I'm not sure about the other people. So you want to make sure that all the other systems that have such location data have also incorporated the latest data set. Okay, verification with sensitive data government bodies. So the issue of knowing whether or not a system has been sold to an actual client is quite important. And also for our case, we also have some rules that as an individual, you can only buy one system for particular categories in 2 years. So then we had to verify our unique identifier was the national ID. So we do have a body nationally that tracks all citizen data, and that is, as you can, very sensitive data because about citizens, where they are born, and you can quickly triangulate and build an entire profile about a person. So we needed to do this integration, but again, Prospect is not a Ugandan entity, and yet they needed to access sensitive data on Ugandan citizens. So we had to do we had to develop a small application that allowed UCCC, which is a government of Uganda entity, to do the verification on behalf of prospect, and then share data that is not sensitive to prospect. But again, so you need to plan for which entities are we going to interface with, and ensure that the requisite MOUs and agreements are in place. Lastly, on this slide is the end user support framework. So, of course, the system has different let me say components. There is the end user facing part, which the user interfaces with. You also have the technology part at the back, the hosting, maybe the APIs and so on. So we did divide ourselves in two, that any other user within the country would ideally interface with UECCC as the first line of support. But then if there were significant issues regarding the use of the platform, we could then push those to the teams that manage, in your case, Odyssey or Prospect. But interestingly, I think the beauty with these DMRVs is that they are open source. Open source meaning anyone can change it, anyone can use it. Because the worry is that what happens when the team that runs Prospect, which is A2AI, goes out of business, God forbid. So if that happens, the tool will ideally remain available for any other person who knows how to change it, to be able to, modify it and continuously maintain it. So we thought that was a plus in this area. So next slide, possibly the last. Sorry, I might have moved a bit fast, but I know we are slightly beyond time. Okay, so key takeaways, we've discussed most of these. One, it's important to have the detailed requirements, very, very key. The second is to plan for interfaces. We've spoken about this. You're going to need to plan for your regulatory bodies, government, and the data protection office. Plan for integration. Couldn't stress this enough, because so the challenge here is that while the tools have avenues for importing data, you need to look at the customer relationship management systems that are with the energy service companies. So you find that you have, let me say, 50 companies, and between them or amongst them, they have 20 or so solutions. So how do those solutions integrate with your DMRV? So that is something that we started then working on later. And for UECCC, we find that while these tools have a data importation mechanism, we still need, now we are considering putting together what, for not going too technical, a high-speed bus that allows quick integration. So the DMRV plugs into that integration platform, and all the other energy service companies or government bodies also plug into the same. That way we then share data more securely, because what is happening for most is that they say, okay, download the data into an Excel and then upload it into the DMRV. But the moment you put it into Excel, then you're compromising the security. That's from a technical perspective. So that is something to plan for. And then the fourth is to, of course, incorporate automation requirements in the documentation. So if you are still in inception or still at the early stages of inception, then what will be required for automation needs to be in your project documents. We started to incorporate this a bit later. When you're signing agreements with the energy service companies, it is to be clear, look, we shall expect you to provide this information, and we're collecting it for this purpose, and this is how it helps you with the verification or how to get your claim paid quickly. Because the entire goal is we are holding capital, people are investing capital, we want to keep it for the shortest time possible. If we do that, then everyone will be happy to participate. The fourth, the last and most critical here, is the plan to allocate for resources. So again, the initial sale is that the tool is free, and it's easy to pick that, but happily, Esme mentioned that you need to plan for other costs. So initially on our side, we said, okay, so there's a tool, it's free. Maybe not a lot of money needs to go into other things, but you actually need to plan for a few other costs to support that project, right? And I think the next slide does have the costs. I might have misled you when I say this is the last slide. So next slide, please. Okay, so on our side, again, as I said, we have had to build a few smaller supportive applications. And for that, we had to put in place infrastructure because the tools themselves have their own infrastructure, right? And their own management teams. But then we needed a few servers to run our own tools that we're using to support some of the processes, as I'd mentioned before. Of course, we needed to provide support. Sometimes you have an energy service companies. Remember, we're talking about rural areas, and they say, look, we are the farthest place and the system cannot work. And so our teams need to then get up and move to those locations, just find out what the problem is. So there are costs there that we hadn't planned, but now in view, the recommendation is that you plan for such. Of course, implementation, we're speaking about APIs. If you have like 50 energy service companies, all of them are looking to automate, how do we support them? Usually you get a local provider who will then discuss with either ODC or prospect technical teams, and then they will support the 50 energy service companies to do the integration. But of course, that is a cost. So something to plan for. Of course, there is the issue of training. You will have to hold workshops to train your energy service companies. And we all know that they keep more ESCOs will keep coming onto the program. More will keep coming. So you need to plan. Maybe every quarter we need to run a refresher training and so on. We do have agents who are going in the market and selling. Agents, the turnover rate for agents is quite high. So you need to run recurring trainings for them. And then, of course, customer care. So on our side, we did plan and put in place, we're putting in place a customer care solution to support. So if users have an issue, they should be able to call us. We should be able to respond to the issues and maybe do recordings, find out how the system is doing, if there are any queries, and how we resolve. Of course, we can't have all of them call. You can imagine for COMESA, all the countries calling ODC or calling prospect. So you need to have a central place where they call within the country or at regional level, and then that gets escalated to the developer if need be. I will beg to pause unless there are any queries and call Desmond back to conclude. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raymond. I'll conclude quickly in these last two slides. Basically, we had to, from our discussion that you've just presented, we had to show screenshots of, what the data input interface looks like, or where the energy service companies ingest data. On the left is a screenshot of data entry screen for off-grid solar for lighting, where the energy service companies are able to real-time input data as the sales are being made at the point of sale of the system. And then on the right, we also have provision for the companies to actually upload already multiple data on sales that have been made. You recognize that some of these energy service companies have already got customer relationship management systems. So their CRM systems are integrated with Prospect to be able to upload their data that is in bulk. They can also do CSV files, Excel, all the provisions actually there on the right. And lastly, if you, of course, this screen shows you biographic data on the beneficiaries, but also data on the technologies, details of the solar system that is being facilitated, details of the sales, whether it is on cash or pay as you go, the amount, all that we need to enable us monitor this system. And then the last slide, if you can proceed, because of time, is an example. The last slide, please. Is an example of the dashboards that we are using to basically report on the data that we are receiving from the energy service companies. Topmost on our left has got real time. We want to monitor the total amount of sales in Uganda shillings that is going into this RBF scheme. If you see there, the 472,000, the pie chart will be able to disaggregate in terms of composition of how much is OGS, which is off-grid solar, how much is CCS, which is clean cooking solution, how much is PUE, which is productive use of energy. That's on the left. And the map of Uganda will support us to view real time how the sales are aggregating and which part of Uganda most of the sales coming from, which region, district, sub-county, up to village level, because we are getting this data of customers from the national identification, which goes up to the village level. Then below it is basically, we can query, depending on the reporting period that we need data, depending on the quarter, the year, that particular energy service company, and what technology we want to see its performance. Then we can view how much of terms of sales has been submitted or claims has been submitted by the energy service company, has been verified by our IVA, independent verification agent, how much of what has been verified is approved, and after approval, how much of it is paid out, and how much has been rejected, and we need reasons for the rejection. This will be presented real time as part of our dashboarding. Then on the right, topmost, we also want to monitor the amount of subsidies that we are giving out to our end users. Depending on the blue shows off-grid solar, the green shows clean cooking solutions, the orange shows productive use of energy. We can actually tease out by each of the ESCO or energy service company, their sales and claims that have been submitted. We can look at how much subsidy each of these ESCO has received as it is going to the end user, but also we have that supplier incentive that goes directly to the energy service company, because we want to interest them to go to the remotest of Uganda. So we have incentives to entice them as part of market entry. Extreme N is to look at the total subsidies that has been accrued as part of our program and the total incentives that has gone to the energy service companies. Below, the last screenshot looks at categories of the way we have categorized the regions. We have interest groups that include the refugee community, the refugee hosting community, but also there are hard to reach districts in Uganda that we are targeting. That include what we call the Karamoja sub-region and the islands on Lake Victoria. So these dashboards, we have ensured that we have designed them. We have particular interfaces that can support the energy service companies. We have interfaces for our project implementation unit. We have interface for our management, but also for our donor, the World Bank, and the project coordination unit at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. This actually, I'm sure you're seeing the zeros there because it answers a question that I saw coming from Dr. Banaga, that the World Bank should identify and use practical examples where it has been applied and digitalization has already been supported and see the results thereof. Colleagues, you will appreciate in this webinar, we were meant to share our experience on the process of adopting the digitization process. And what we've been able to present here has been the journey we have had the last 7-8 months, basically to design, ensure that our requirements are as we expect, and also A2I, that is Energy Access Institute, gives us exactly what we want, because also the RBF functionality was something that they had to incorporate newly. Previously, they have capitalized on visualizations from data sets, but the RBF functionality is something we had to sit down with them and customize. So we are a work in progress, but already we have articulated our needs and this has been designed. We shall be going live with this prospect system at the end of this month. And the RBF scheme is to be launched. The tentative date is for next month, September. And we are confident right now that indeed what we envisage that prospect can be able to provide for us to ensure efficiency and effectiveness of the RBF scheme is upheld. We are confident in that regard. And that should give us also confidence to answer Dr. Banega. We thank you for listening to us. Thanks. I submit.
Let us continue to the last part and then we take questions after that. I'm coming back to take you through the last section. It's just showing you a proposed approach to leveraging digital technology under ASCENT. You can have country A and country B feeding into a regional platform, with them having their own national platforms. And the flow of information, the legend is shown on the right side there. So we can have information flowing from countries' own platforms to a regional platform. You can show the other components, Esme. And information flowing from the regional platform to the carbon finance platform and transaction layer back to the countries as payments for climate finance. And also information can flow into national planning, regional planning, and then feeding back into the countries themselves as they correct after monitoring and verification. And information can also flow into e-tendering. Next. This is the complete diagram. And on the next slide, we are showing the end-to-end nature of the digital platforms, from planning to carbon registry and carbon financing. There are systems that cover the whole spectrum, like Odyssey. There are systems like below the national planning box that only do national planning. And there are systems that can do e-tendering and contract management only. And there are systems that can do digital monitoring, reporting, and verification, like Prospect, or feeding into payment systems like carbon financing and RBF. So through the adoption, countries can identify where they need to leverage on digital platforms and then select accordingly. Next. These are like questions that we want member states and you, their representatives, to keep and try to answer through these presentations and webinars. Objectives and definitions. Through the COMESA's convening power, our objective will be to facilitate identification and adoption of relevant digital tools for each country. And as COMESA, we can support countries in deploying these tools. The question that arises is, how can COMESA best support the country's digitalization under ASCENT? It's just a question to think about and maybe generate specific answers as we go along. And also, which digital tool, state-of-the-art digital tools for integrated energy planning, digital monitoring, verification, and process management are there? Precedent widely adopted digital tools with the highest compatibility and interoperability with an established track record, and which tools offer the best value for money to client governments. The question that would be asked, which areas of the project lifecycle need digitization or new digital tools in your country? What is the best combination of tools to cover these areas to the maximum value, to maximize value for money? And COMESA adoption and engagement strategy. Inclusiveness should be considered, relevance should be paramount, and sustainability for simultaneous empowerment of governments through extensive technical assistance and capacity building. Those are some of the aspects we will consider together with you as we move along with you in the adoption of digital technologies. Next. This slide is just showing the stages that we can partner with the member states in adopting digital technologies. scoping to verify your needs, gaps, and the existing system, design to harmonize practices and leverage existing tools at the country and regional level, or even international level, pilot to empower national stakeholders by mobilizing technical assistance and build capacity, enhance existing infrastructure through interoperability and feedback loops to improve the regional architecture, and then scale up after piloting in your country, where you sustain improvement and share knowledge, document lessons learned, track knowledge, and improve the regional architecture, sustain the adoption of the best digital practices, and promote data sharing practices and seek regional alignment. So we'll move with you from scoping to design to piloting and scale up. Next slide. There is a conference that is coming, Innovate for Climate, whose objective is to promote innovative climate solutions across finance, market policy, and technology by bringing the public and the private sector together. It's running from September 10 to September 12. And on the 13th, there is an ASCENT Carbon Day. So focal points for digitalization and climate are invited. I think you are in the process of obtaining visas. As we keep discussing carbon financing, innovative ways to combat climate change, and the adoption and operationalization of digital platforms like we have been discussing in this webinar. So this was given to you during the ASCENT launch, where you were supposed to register as early as possible. Now let's fight to have the visas, because we're in the process of obtaining visas, so that we meet again in Berlin within the week of 10 to 13 September. Next slide. Upcoming webinars are Introduction to Geospatial Electrification Planning on the 26th of August, webinar Introducing Carbon Finance on the 29th, and the Innovate for Climate coming after these webinars. So these webinars are preparing you for the Innovate for Climate Change event. So by November 2024, there will be a prototype for the digital monitoring and reporting and verification platform. And we support countries as we go along from then on, after the Innovate for Climate and the initial webinars. We may end up planning more webinars as we identify gaps that need to be filled in order to implement effectively in the member. Next. I think this is the end of the webinar. Dr. Shileshe has attended another meeting, so we can attend to question and answers. I don't know how it can be done, Joshua, as these guys might be muted. Maybe if someone raises a hand, you can unmute them for them to be able to speak. I submit for now.
Moses, you can go ahead.
Was there a hand raised, Joshua?
Yes, Moses raised his hand. I enabled his mic, so he can unmute on his side and just take
Moses,
the floor.
unmute and speak.
If it doesn't work, perhaps we can use the chat.
You can type in the chat, Moses.
I see some questions coming in the chat. Perhaps to Dr. Bananga Bangi, I mean, basically, you can see that there are several segments where digitalization can make sense. And it's something so complex that we will take a few sessions to actually go through the different segments. Today, we focused on program implementation and design with a particular emphasis on DMRV, with our UECCC colleagues presenting their experience. But the next webinar on August 26th is on geospatially informed planning. And I think here we will have Kenya talk about their experience. So the idea is that as we go along the webinar series, we actually benefit from your experience, your collective experience, and you share the experience you've had in adopting digital tools. So we will reach out to different countries who have been leading on the adoption of digital tools so that everyone can benefit from their experience.
I will direct the following question to the Ugandan team. What are the best practices for training field operators to use and maintain digital energy tools effectively?
Well, maybe I can take that quick. Raymond can supplement. In our journey of adopting this digital platform prospect, we have so far had a training of the users, but this training we had to ensure it was customized into two. The first session was basically sort of user acceptance, and we had to do this physically. We realized online concentration may not be as expected because we need these people to appreciate and learn it hands-on. So part of the user acceptance was to ensure that we present the functionalities of Prospect, what us as the implementing agency has designed, what we expect of the energy service companies, and also what Prospect can actually present. So we had to ensure that we collect feedback as much as possible from them as users, what is acceptable to them, and what they deem rather cumbersome that need to be adjusted. That was the first session. And at the same time, we trained them in the first phase of our customization. Now, that was sometime in June. So we took feedback from them as a way of improving the system. We got back onto the drawing board together with our A2I team to basically ensure that all the issues have been addressed. And also the team that we train, they are in charge of IT and M&E and the part of administration at the energy service companies. We expect them to translate the knowledge and transfer it to their field or salesperson. That is one. But also two, we have a second phase, which is the last, to basically show them the finished product based on the feedback we got from them. And this is planned to be conducted in the next 2 weeks before end of August, basically to show them what we got from them as feedback and how much we have improved and to ensure that we have user acceptance from them. So the physical training is the best way, and also ensuring that there's knowledge transfer from A2I, us as UECCC as master trainers, and also to the energy service companies and their salespersons in the field. That is.
Thank you. There are many. Okay.
Maybe just want to add on. That's the beauty of a multidisciplinary team. So look at a normal company. The normal company will have, let me say, head office, and will have hundreds of salespeople, field people. So the way we did it was that the training of the entire platform, because the platform has very many features, happened mostly with the management team of the energy service companies. But then the design approach we took, which was a great innovation, was that the field people are usually required mostly to capture data. So the only interface we expose to them is a data capture form, and then they view. So it's just a one-pager. So with a one-pager, it's easy to pick someone with very minimal training to be able to do it. Education, actually, not even to train. So you just have a very small, simple form, and that is what we expose to all the field personnel, knowing that there are hundreds, and today you have hundreds, tomorrow they go, another new 100 come. So we took those two approaches. One, we are training the service companies, and then we are also creating a very simple interface for the field team. Thank you.
There are many questions that are still coming on the chat. We have overshot our allocated time. I will pose one question from the chat, and then the others we will distribute to the Ugandan team or to ourselves, between me and Esme, and answer and forward to the participants. The last question that I will pose to you, the Ugandan team, is how about the shortlisting of the ESCOs? Do you use the digital platform as well to shortlist the energy companies?
Desmond, do you want to go first? Okay,
okay.
I could take that. So our shortlisting process did not include the DMRV. It was purely an administrative function on our side that started way before. Remember that we are still in the process of fine-tuning the solution. So the shortlisting could not wait. These are activities that we needed to run concurrently. So it's a workflow function that was not planned for in our digital solution. Submit.
And to supplement in that regard, we had an expression of interest published, and the energy service companies applied. We have a technical review committee that is provided for in the project operations manual. The team had to sit, evaluate the submissions, evaluate the technologies in terms of their specifications based on our Uganda National Bureau of Standards expectations, and approve their products and the energy service companies. Not all were approved, but some that we deemed satisfying the expectations. Thank you.
Thank you to the attendees, Dr.
Sorry, Ahid, because I think, I mean, if I can add to this and also tackle very briefly some of the questions, if we can spare another 5 minutes, because some of them are extremely important. Just to add to
just to make you aware, Esme, I have got something that needs me in 1 hour to have been reached somewhere. I am traveling tomorrow, so let it be very quick.
Yes, absolutely, very quick. Thanks, Ahid. So basically, in terms of segments that can be covered by digital tools, I think it's for, does Prospect cover the tendering stage? No, it doesn't cover this. It doesn't cover contract management, but as shown here, you can capitalize on the interoperability of the tools to either adopt 2 tools if that is better, if that meets your needs, or you adopt one if, for example, you want Odyssey, but it's a proprietary solution. So I think it's about understanding what you need, what budget you have, and how you can adopt existing tools within your constraints. That brings me to tackle the question, very, very important, how can we get support for adopting MRV? But it would be the same. The answer is the same for how could we get support to get process management tools. Basically, through ASCENT, you can access technical assistance that will be delivered through COMESA. And the first step is through this webinar series that highlight some of the benefits of some of the tools. And then you are all of the countries are have nominated focal points to attend the Innovate for Climate conference in Berlin between September 10 to 13, including the ASCENT Carbon Day. And here you can meet in COMESA's booth, you can meet providers of relevant digital tools. And we encourage you to spend as much time as you can in this booth talking to different providers, and there will be tools or exhibitors representing the energy planning side, some presenting the process management tools, and there will obviously be also prospect on Odyssey in this booth for DMRV. We will be there and we can think with you about the next steps for your country. And to the question very briefly on if you already have a DMRV system for carbon finance, often it's not quite the same functionalities. We really need to look at what is your system doing in terms of functionality. If you have one for climate finance, you don't need to change if you just need climate finance because it's working. But if you want to adopt a system which can help you implement a results-based financing scheme, then let's see if your system can be enhanced, improved. We can help you think through this, or whether it makes more sense to have two systems. Let it be Odyssey or Prospect for an RBF management scheme and linked with your other system. So very briefly here to tackle the questions that were in the chat. Thank you so much for attending and for showing so much interest. Ahid, I'm handing over to you.
Thank you, Esme. Unfortunately, I have to run somewhere as well, and we have overshot our time. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we are looking forward to be having you in Berlin, but after passing through the remaining webinars, and then we arrange the other following webinars as well. And on behalf of Dr. Achileshe and COMESA, thank you and see you in Berlin after seeing you in the following two webinars before Berlin. Thank you. Joshua and the Kenyan team, the Ugandan team, thank you very much. We look forward to having you again demonstrate your experience along the way. Nawina is hearing me from across. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.